Good day everyone, you are live on Campus Tutorial TV. I'm by name Abubakar Saada Jibril, aka the Golden Voice of GSU. Today I'm going to be talking on the world's contemporary history. That is the course offered by both historians and political science students. In the world contemporary history, I single-handedly chose nationalism to be the topic of discussion of today. The world contemporary history is a course that is basically designed to expose students to understand major events that took place in the history of the world in 19th century, 20th century, and to know how those events shaped the contemporary world that we are inside today. Nationalism is indeed one of the most important phenomenon or events that took place in the history of the world, particularly in Africa, which led to the independence of so many countries of Africa, as well as India, as well as part of Asia to some extent. But coming to Nigeria or Africa as a whole, nationalism is a concept that attracts so many interpretations of scholars. But here, I would like to bring a definition of a prominent scholar of history called late KBC Onwubiko. He defined nationalism within the African context as the patriotic movement or sentiment held by the bond of common language and common historical experiences to assert their right to live under the government of their own making for the preservation of their political, economic, and social institutions. Nationalism, according to scholars, is divided into two stages or phases. The first phase of nationalism, it was the initial stage that took place in 15th century when the Europeans moved into African countries, and in those days traditional rulers were in existence. Those traditional rulers, they begin to resist the colonial masters, and that is the first stage of nationalism according to some scholars. The second stage is the stage that was hijacked by the intellectual able bodies of Nigerians, people like Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Herbert Macaulay, people like Patrick Lumumba of Uganda, people like Sékou Senghor of Senegal, so many of them. Those are the intellectual elites that unite themselves. After uniting themselves, in the other term, what we call as Pan-Africanism, that is the unity of the African people. They were able to establish this kind of unity, and they began to move against the Europeans in order to get independence of the African countries. And that is the second stage of nationalism. So the first stage is organized by traditional rulers, but there is no unification among them. They do it independently. For example, the history of King Jaja of Opobo. He resisted the Europeans, and this happened independent of him. He just do it within his domain, and he was defeated by the Europeans. That is the first stage of nationalism. People like Atahiru, Sultan Atahiru of Sokoto Caliphate. He also resisted the Europeans, but he was later killed by Captain Marsh at somewhere in Gombe. Then you can check the history of Edo State. Edo State, there is someone called Oba Ovanenwe. He also resisted the colonials, and he was killed, in which they bombarded the community in those days. So they experienced a high rate of killing, that is massacre, in the Edo. That is what we tag historically as the first stage of nationalism. While the second stage, it was organized by the educated elite, who were privileged to study abroad and have westernly sound, began to establish unity among themselves and began what is known as nationalism. So in a nutshell, nationalism is the African countries from the shackle of colonialism. That is to say, nationalism is in connectivity with colonialism, because colonialism is the Europeans controlling the country, while nationalism is a struggle to liberate the countries from the shackle of colonialism. And that is what we mean by nationalism. It's one of the important phenomena that took place in 19th, 20th century, which led to the independence of so many African countries in history, which produced the contemporary world that we are today. Let's take Africa for examples. We have so many reasons, so many factors that led to nationalism in Africa as well as in India. India experienced nationalism as a result of Europeans dominating all aspects of their economy, of the society. So they moved a nationalist struggle which led to their independence in 1947. Also in Nigeria or in Africa as a whole, because we are studying world contemporary history. Most of those worlds, they struggle to get their own independence. And most of countries of Africa, they got independent from 1960 upward. It is only Ghana that got independent in 1957. Then Nigeria, 1960. So you can see a big gap of 3 years between them. But so many other countries of Africa got independent 1960 also. So now I want to discuss briefly on the factors that led to nationalism, nationalist struggle. But before then, it is very important to understand who are the African nationalists. The African nationalists are a clique or a group of educated elites who unite themselves and struggle in order to liberate Africa from colonialism and their impact in all ramifications. That is people like Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Herbert Macaulay, Sele Senghor of Senegal, Patrick Lumumba of Uganda, people like Julius Nyerere, people like Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya, among others. Those are the intellectual elites who established various political parties in those days in order to sensitize, to create awareness and consciousness to the people of Africa as to understand the evil involved in colonialism. Then the next step here is the factors that led to nationalist struggle in the history of Africa as a whole. One of the factors that led to the nationalist struggle of Africa and any other country. But mind you, you should put into consideration that factors that led to nationalism differs from country to country. For example, in Nigeria, political and economic factors led to nationalist struggle. But if you go back to Europe, Austria-Hungary, before Serbia was even independent, it was not a political struggle, but it was a social struggle and a political struggle at the same time. Second factor is the First World War. The First and the Second World War is a war between the European countries themselves. Particularly Second World War, Germany and Britain, America, they were in a serious war. We were in a serious war between them because Germany, under the control of Adolf Hitler, want to take control of other European countries. So, in order to have an assistance, those European countries began to recruit, take some people out of their colonies to assist them, including Nigeria and other African countries. Through this means they packed a lot of African people to assist them to fight against Germany. Also, Germany went to their own colony and packed also some number of people to assist them to fight against other European countries. So when the war ended, the African educated elites who experienced and having knowledge of the fact that the Europeans went to their colony and shipped some Africans to assist them in the war, they began to think that, okay, why is it that other European countries like Britain, America don't want Germany to take their control? but them, they are controlling Nigeria and African countries. Okay, if this is the case, we will fight against the Europeans themselves in order to free our country. That is how the First and the Second World War contributed as the causes or factor lead to nationalist struggle of Africa. Because in the war, it shows the superiority of the African race and the inferiority of the European race. Because before, prior to the war, most of the Nigerians and African people regard the white men, the Europeans, as superior, as angels, people that don't die. Not knowing that they are even stronger than the Europeans. So this became clear and demystified in the First and the Second World War when they went to assist their masters. So it contributed as the second factor that led to the nationalist struggle of Africa. Thirdly, the returning of the educated elite. The educated elite, people like Herbert Macaulay, people like Nnamdi Azikiwe, who study up to the level of PhD, doctor, in those days. When they went to the European countries to study, they experienced the privileges, the comfortability the people of the Europeans live. They study judiciously, the infrastructural facilities put in place, which made life bearable and comfortable to the Europeans. So when they returned back to Nigeria and Africa, they began to think, why will they continue to live under the colonialism while those countries are there, live comfortable, independent of their own, and nobody controlling them? That is what sparked the educated elite to unite and establish unity. That is the Pan-Africanism. And that led to the nationalist struggle. Another one, mass media. Mass media also played a very instrumental role in the nationalist struggle of Africa. In those days, newspapers were established. In 1925, we have the first political parties was also established in Nigeria, NNDP, National Nigeria Democratic Party, by Herbert Macaulay in 1923. And so many political parties, NCNC, that you've been hearing, Northern People Congress, all these political parties were just a platform coupled with the newspaper, the radio stations, all compounded, create more awareness to the people of Africa and Nigeria in particular, which made the African people to hate and to understand the evil in colonialism. That helped the movement in securing the independence of Africa and Nigeria in particular. Another factor which led to a nationalist struggle, it involves the social system. When the Europeans take control of other African countries, they impose so many changes in the social operations of those countries, which go against the internal traditional systems. It go against the norms and values of the traditional settings of those countries. So those people began to rise against them. Another factor is Western education again. It is the Western education that equipped the educated elite with the idea, with the philosophy, with the critical thinking to know that they should organize themselves to establish unity first, and then they should struggle in order to get the independence of their country, in order to have a better development and progress of their country. Therefore, these are the most important. There are so many factors that contribute to nationalism movement in Africa and the world at large. But the most prominent and the most important one are the ones that I have mentioned so far. And I'll explain as brief as possible for you to understand. So the factors, in case, because I don't want you guys to get confused. The factors are as follows. I mentioned economic factor. I mentioned the First and the Second World War as one of the factors. I mentioned the role of mass media. Political parties and mass media were compounded together. Then I also mentioned social factor. Then finally, the Western education. as well as the return of the educated elites to the independence of those countries, producing the contemporary world that we found today. Thank you very much.